everyone, welcome to Let's Chat Reality. I'm Michael,
And I'm Molly.
and today we are going to be discussing a few different shows. We will start with Vanderpump Rules and Summer House, and then go into a little bit of The GOAT. So, we also have some news stories, some really exciting news stories that we will start off with. So, let's go into the Bravo breakdown. Now, to start, we have yesterday, it was revealed that Real Housewives of New Jersey is not going to have a traditional reunion for this season. So, this will be the first time ever for New Jersey, and only the second time in Bravo history that a Real Housewives season won't have a reunion. Now, we don't know exactly what this is going to entail, but it is really interesting because the wording that they said was they won't have a traditional reunion. So apparently they're trying to figure out what to do with this season, how to end it, because the cast is so incredibly divided. The last reunion was so toxic between Teresa and Melissa. And going into this season, basically, they are refusing to acknowledge each other's existence. Teresa and Margaret aren't filming with each other. It's just so toxic and so divided that to me, it kind of makes sense that it won't have a real reunion. I don't know what to do in this instance, though. I feel like it is such a weird situation. Now, Molly, I know that you don't have a lot of background in this, but just kind of knowing that it's so toxic and there's cast members who won't film with each other, what would you do in that situation? Because I feel like we have to have something to cap the season, but I don't know exactly what that answer is.
Yeah, no, that does sound like there's a lot going on there that I don't really know all the details there. But I feel like in general, like maybe they could be able to do kind of pods of a reunion, like certain people who do like filming with each other can talk about stuff and then they kind of piece it together of having more of that put together instead of just not having it. Or I guess they're still not gonna, they're still having it, right? Or they say they're not gonna have a traditional one.
Yeah, so I think what it sounds like is basically something like either what you just described or maybe just like individual interviews with everyone. I
Okay.
think I like your answer better because thought about this a little bit, and in my mind originally, I was thinking individual would be best because that way people's answers aren't swayed by what other people are saying, and you can kind of get really like honest answers from everyone. But maybe it's easier to do it kind of in small groups and you ask them both groups the same questions, and then you kind of can piece in like how this group answered it and how this other group answered it, and that way you're not getting all the crosstalk and people not letting each other finish their sentences because people are only in a room with people who they generally agree with. But then you can kind of see how different people answered the same question. But I guess they could also do that with individual. We kind of saw that a little bit with the start of the Vanderpump Rules season 10 reunion, if you remember, with like Ariana, Tom, and Rachel. Andy Cohen interviewed each of them individually, and we kind of got some answers before they started the actual reunion. But God, I feel like if they could have a reunion, it's kind of crazy how Jersey's even more toxic than the season 10 Vanderpump Rules reunion, it seems like. So that's kind of wild. But I also think it makes sense just because we kind of ended the last reunion with basically acknowledging the fact that, hey, these people hate each other. They're never going to have any resolution. There's no point in trying to reunite them because we're not going to get anywhere. So we will stay tuned for that. That'll be pretty interesting, I would think, in the next 3-4 weeks, probably that would film, considering Jersey seasons are usually pretty short. So we will definitely keep you posted as we hear more on the plans for that. But let's get now to Million Dollar Listing Los Angeles season 15. We got a premiere date and a trailer. Premieres July 10th. It's been quite a while since we've had a season of Million Dollar Listing anything. I think it's been like a year and a half now. It definitely feels like just watching this trailer that more and more this show is kind of going in a little bit of a selling sunset route because this show, and I think it still is much more focused on real estate than selling Sunset or selling the OC is. But in terms of just the fashion and the high production value, they're definitely kind of going a little bit in a selling Sunset route, which I don't think is a bad thing. Look, it works for that show. Yeah, same cast as last season. It's a very, very small cast, but July 10th, we finally get more $1 million listings. So excited for that.
Yeah, no, that'll be exciting to see. I love looking at all LA real estate that I cannot afford, so it's
Yeah,
always fun.
exactly. Exactly. And I feel like there's so much talk about how, like, oh, $1 million listing agents are like real agents and, they're the real deal. Whereas selling sunset agents, maybe don't sell quite as much as they would like you to think on the show. $1 million listing, you really, really do get a lot more focus on real estate, and you can tell that these people are legit. So if you like the houses and that part of selling sunset, I think $1 million listing is definitely for you. But now let's go into our full recaps here. So let's start with Vanderpump Rules. Reunion Part 3, the last episode, maybe ever, of Vanderpump Rules, question mark? I don't think so. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. But let's start with I think let's just go right into the last 10 minutes here of the finale talk. So the cast got to watch the last 10 minutes of the finale. They had not seen it prior, and we got to see everybody's reactions to that. Now, there's been some talk since this has aired about that kind of idea in general of waiting to show them the last 10 minutes until then. And especially in terms of whether it was fair or nasty to Ariana specifically to do that to her, because this was all focused on Ariana, obviously, and everybody's thoughts about Ariana. And so, what did you think of this idea? Do you think that it was too kind of mean, or was it, worth it for the good TV of it all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone can argue that like it definitely was good TV. But I do feel bad for Ariana in that I also have heard that they kind of like trapped her in there, like they wouldn't let her kind of get out of that kind of atmosphere, like even though she like really didn't want to watch the show, like that was kind of, it seemed more forced upon her than like it wasn't totally fair in that sense that like she didn't give consent, it sounded like, into watching that. And obviously like we saw those last 7 minutes and we were like, oh gosh, like this is a lot for us to not even be the ones who are the receiving of that, like that obviously is going to be very hurtful for Ariana. So I feel for her, but also like yes, she did, I guess in a way did sign up for it because she does share her life on television, and she's now have to film a reunion talking about it all. So I don't know. It goes both ways, but I more am leaning towards I feel bad for her.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do too. I think in a way, when I first heard about the fact that they were doing this, I didn't immediately have a problem with it. I thought, oh, wow, that's going to be really interesting. They kind of did a similar thing on the Traitors to a much smaller level on that reunion where they showed them all the winning moment. But now that I think about it more and I've heard Ariana's perspective on it, I do understand what she's saying. That basically they tried all season to get this reaction out of her. We saw it a couple of times where she really, went after Tom at the beach day, and a couple, maybe, one or two other times where we saw some real, like, strong anger from her. But for the most part, she's been very stoic, very, trying not to show her crying or emotional about anything to do with this. And they tried, in the finale so hard to get her to have that conversation with Tom, and everyone was so upset that it didn't happen. And it was like, okay, now we're going to do this when you are forced to be in this room. We're going to show you this tape, show all your so called friends talking all this crap about you, and see how you react to that. And, they got her. They were successful in their mission. And when you think about it that way, it kind of starts to feel icky. I mean, look, it produced a great moment at the reunion. We did get Ariana and Tom talking to each other in some way for the first time that whole reunion. So it did its job, I guess. But, I do feel like it was a little bit icky when I think about it more and more. But let's talk about Tom and Ariana's conversation there. Um, apologized to her. Ariana basically said, I just want you out of my life. What did you think about that moment? Do you think Tom was being genuine there in his crying and emotional plea to her, or was that overacting?
I don't know entirely. I feel like Tom definitely is overacting in some ways, but also like he does. I think he does feel like that he wants Ariana at least to not think of him in such a bad light. I think is causing a lot of that emotion right now. Not necessarily that he feels bad about how he treated her. I think it's more about now how she reacts to things that like she just sees him as like some totally like evil person to her, even though like for 10 years that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I think that Tom doesn't understand. He feels like we were together for 9 years. You know me. You know that I am an emotional person and have these strong feelings of all kinds, and that this isn't acting. But to Ariana's perspective, she's like, no, I never knew you. Clearly, how can I trust you when you had this 7 months plus long affair that was completely behind my back? So how am I supposed to trust that anything you're doing now is genuine? And it's kind of crazy to me that after all this time, because this is a year out now, during the season we were saying it was just a few months, blah, blah, blah. Now we're a full year out. We can see a big change in Ariana because Ariana has been calm as a cucumber. This entire reunion, she has been. I mean, I just have to applaud Ariana here because every answer was perfection from her. She explained herself so well. She wasn't giving anyone the reaction that they wanted, and she was just amazing, and you can tell that that time has healed her a little bit, that she's really done the work to move forward from this affair, whereas Tom still doesn't understand anything more, it feels like, than he did days after this affair. It feels like he has not learned from anything he has done. He is just thinking, okay, time is going to heal this, I don't need to change. As time goes on, people are just going to get over it and we're going to move on. And it's like, not really, you know? People are allowed to move on from you if you don't change. They're not going to move on with you, they will move on away from you. And it just doesn't seem like he gets it. I don't know if this was genuine. I think that parts of it were probably. I think that, he is an emotional person. So I do think that I believe what he probably has some sort of regret somewhere because he's not just a robot alien. But I think that a lot of that is like a little piece of it is true, and then he just goes 200 times overboard in an effort to make himself look like a sympathetic character.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the Lala of it all. So after this clip aired, a lot of it was focused on, Lala's big speech and venting, and we got to hear Ariana's perspective on it, and she was clearly very hurt by it. And Lala then went on kind of another big speech at the reunion. What did you think of it? Did it sway your opinion at all, either way?
No, I'm still Team Mariana on this. I feel like what Lala was bringing up, like, still just didn't really sit right. I feel like in general, like, what her concerns were still just didn't totally make sense to me. I'm like, what? Why is she? She just seems to be jealous still, and like not able to be happy for Ariana's successes and all this stuff that a lot of it, I feel like she just wanted a lot more of the airtime that she's getting, and like all this stuff that it just doesn't. I just don't really believe Lala on this.
Yeah, I think it is clearly after this reunion. I think it's very, very clear that it's jealousy. I
Yeah,
think that in Lala's mind, she doesn't understand why the audience reacted so differently to her scandal than they did to Ariana. And I think the big difference is just that, first of all, they're two different people. Ariana is just over the seasons of the show. Ariana has been a more sympathetic character than Lala. I think that
yeah,
people just gravitate to Ariana, whereas Lala has been very, very up and down. But I think that she is just a more controversial character and not seen quite so much as this victim in the whole Randall. Well, I mean, look, she is a victim in the Randall situation. I'll give her that. Randall was clearly an awful person, mini Harvey Weinstein, he's been called. So I do feel for a lot in that. And I think that a lot of people did feel for her at the time, but I think that it was a little bit more of a situation where kind of everyone saw it coming to a certain extent. Not as bad as it was necessarily, but just like all seemed very kind of tenuous from the very, very beginning. Whereas Tom and Ariana to the public seemed so strong as a couple. And they were both kind of the fan favorites for a long time. And so that was just so shocking when it happened. And I think just that brought it, and just the whole best friend of it all, like brought it to this level of pop culture relevancy that could have never expected. And because Ariana was the victim in that, she ended up getting all these opportunities and all these brand deals and jobs and everything, and Lala feels like, where was that for me? And I think the problem is that she is taking it all out on Ariana, but it's not Ariana's fault. Who would not take advantage of these opportunities that she's been given? If anything, I think they're frustrated at the show of it. Lala, sure, can be upset about people not being honest and not being genuine, but again, it's not Ariana's fault. I think that they feel like the producers kind of put them in a situation where it was like mid-season. They told them, this season sucks. If something doesn't happen here, then the show's going to be canceled. We're going to stop filming, and you're going to have to move on to something else. And I think that Sheena and Lala took that as, we need to get Tom and Ariana to talk. And if Ariana's going to keep these boundaries up, then the show isn't going to work. And I think that they felt like they came to Ariana with that, and she wasn't receptive to it and wasn't willing to budge. So I think that's the frustration there. But again, take that out on the show, not on Ariana. Sorry, that was a long soapbox.
No, yeah, that reminded me about, like, I was seeing videos 'cause I didn't watch it back when Lala and Randall had that separation, like that scandal, whatever was going on, because I didn't see it at that time. But her just like still bringing that up, like that was in the past. Like this is a totally entirely different situation here, and what you're saying is people just like Ariana more. That she's obviously going to get more of that praise and like love the end of that relationship versus the end of Lala's. That like she's just comparing something that's not an apples to apples comparison there, even though they were both cheated on. But like she wants to see it as that.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting how she's willing to compare the situations when it benefits her. But then when Ariana tries to compare it, or anyone tries to compare it, she's like, well, I have kids. And, these are two very different situations. And it feels like it is very kind of, hypocritical in that way, I think.
Yeah.
But let's kind of look forward to the future. Where do we go from here? Do you think that the show is going to come back? And what do you think it will look like if it does?
Yeah, I've tried to think about this recently and I still don't know entirely like what I think is going to happen. Like I definitely think it's going to come back, but I don't know what that means. Like I think they're going to have some sort of cast shifts and changes in that cuz it can't stay the same obviously in terms of what's going on. Like not everyone wants to be back, it seems like. So I think there's going to be some changes, or like just in general, like with the dynamics of the group, like we need something new. But I wanted to come back. I really like the show now that I started watching, and I don't want this to end. So we'll see what happens. But what do you think, Michael?
I think it will come back 100%. I agree with you. I don't think this is the end by any means. I do think that if they take a few months off, if we can kind of have it not be in the pop culture zeitgeist as much as, it has been for the last year, we kind of can forget about it for a little bit, let them live their lives, let them move on. Lala have her kid, or, I don't know if she'll go through the whole pregnancy before they start filming again. But let things happen that are not Scandival related so that we can pick cameras back up in say October, November, sometime around then, and have other things to talk about. Because the problem was this season was filmed so close to when it all happened that there was just nothing else going on in their lives. That was the only thing anyone could think of 24/7. And so if some time passes, then hopefully things can move forward and maybe they get to a point where Tom and Ariana can kind of be like, like the season of New Jersey that we talked about, where Teresa and Melissa are in the same room and just don't acknowledge each other. And maybe Tom and Ariana can eventually get to that point where they're just not, we don't have to talk about them. We don't need to try to get them to have a scene together. They can just be in the same room and say, okay, you don't need to talk. So I think if we can get to that point, we can move forward with season 12 without too many changes.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll see what happens.
Yes, we will. But let's move on to the Summer House finale. What a finale. What a season. I've loved the season of Summer House. So, so good every episode. Now, let's start with the beginning of the episode. We had a little bit with Sierra and West, talk of their relationship, whether this will be something in the future, and whether West is taking it seriously enough. Now, do you think that Sierra is right when she said that just nothing is a big deal to Wes, that everything is so casual? And do you think that she should move on if he's not willing to commit, or should they really try to make this work?
Yeah, I still think that he's not to the level of maturity that Sarah needs in a relationship. That if she's already having these concerns like this early on in that, like there should be more of an alignment in what their goals are and what she wants and what he wants. It doesn't seem like they are in that same place. And so I feel like it's in the best interest for them not to be together at this point. Like maybe he will grow up a little bit more and like realize things. Like I think for him being 28, like that's still young in my opinion. Like I think a 28-year-old guy is like still needs to be mature in that sense for that like they if especially with what Wes is saying, like he's like not had he hadn't cut off communication with his girls that he like had 40 conversations with, like that kind of stuff. Like if he was like fully set on wanting something serious, he would have ended that right away. And I just feel like he's not.
Yeah. No, and I think too, and I guess this is, I don't know, slightly spoiler alert, but we saw in the trailer for the reunion where he was like, oh, there were so many girls sliding into my DMs that are Bravo fans. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that he's willing to even like entertain those shows, okay, he's not ready for this to be a serious commitment. He wants to still play around a little bit and talk to these girls who are sliding into his DMs. And I think that shows that clearly he and Sierra are not on the same page. Like maybe in the future they can make this work, but right now it's not the right time for that.
Yeah. That also I think swayed my opinion. Like after seeing that clip, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, never mind. I don't believe in them.
Yeah. I kind of wish they had waited to show that until after the finale because it did kind of. I viewed the finale a little differently, that part of it, knowing that that was to come. But I think if I had maybe watched it without knowing that, I would have still had more questions about, oh, maybe they can make it work. But yeah, knowing that, no, they're clearly not together right now. But let's move on to the meat of this episode, the Lindsay and Carl breakup scene. Now, this had been teased all season long. We've been waiting for this since last September, almost a year now. Molly, what did you think of that scene?
Well, I'm definitely glad I started watching Summer House this season. Did not disappoint at
You
all.
started on a good one. I don't know that it can ever live up to this again.
I know. I'm like, wow. I started Vanderpump last season.
I
Summer House
know.
this season.
Jeez, you are just. We need to start getting you to watch every show, and they're gonna take it to another level. Good luck
Exactly. Well,
trying to.
I started when I know there's the drama. I guess is what
Yeah,
happened here.
that's true.
Because we already knew all season long this was gonna happen. But it was definitely interesting seeing the conversation of the actual breakup. Like, it wasn't as dramatic as I thought it would be. Honestly, like it was more just a conversation, which I guess is a good thing. But it was more I feel like the just general stuff we've already heard of like Carl just not feeling like he's being supported and like the ways that he wants to be treated, like all that stuff that we had obviously seen all season long and like his concerns with that. But Lindsay's still saying that, like, well, we can work on these things, or like, you're not even trying to. Like, I think it's exhausted enough that they've worked on it. Like, I think after that many times, like, just let that be. Like, you don't need to work on that anymore. Like, it's done. Which is like kind of what the girls were trying to tell her too. Like, you didn't want to be with him. Like, it's fine. But overall, like, it was definitely like a breakup. Like, like sad. Like, it's not anything you want to go through. But I think it was just already like it was just meant to happen in that situation, just because they were just gonna be so unhappy if they ended up getting married.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think overall this is definitely for the best. They did not need to be together. They would be in a very unhappy marriage if they had gotten married here. And I think even if they had just watched this season and they were still together, I don't think that they would still be together if they watched this season as a married couple. So, absolutely, I think he did them both a favor, like Paige said. They did not need to be together at all. I do. I still think that there is a possibility that Carl went into that scene thinking that he just wanted to maybe delay the wedding. I don't. I think that he definitely knew going into that scene, we are going to come out of this not getting married in 2 months or whenever, or however long it was supposed to be. But I do think that just based on some of the way he was talking, I think that maybe he thought, okay, maybe if this goes well, then we can say let's just push it back. But then I don't know how he expected it to go any differently, because it did really seem like he had it all very planned out. Like he had an answer for everything. It didn't seem like there was anything Lindsay could say necessarily that would have swayed him. So I don't know. Like I have both of those thoughts, but they don't work together. So I don't know. I don't know what he thought going into it, because he claims that he didn't go into it meaning for it to be a breakup. And I guess that I believe him slightly, but I don't know how he could have thought it would have gone any other way.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're also not seeing the entirety of that
Yeah.
conversation, so maybe there were parts of it. Because it didn't seem like like, I didn't really feel like he said, we're breaking up. Like, he just was like, I can't see myself marrying you. But then when
Mhm.
Lindsay called her dad, she was expressing that he said that we're breaking up. So I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't really hear that in their conversation,
Well, I
but I'm
think
sure it
she
was
kind of
said.
said it.
What?
Yeah, like she kind of said it at the end.
Yeah.
She was like, "Well, then what is there to talk about? Clearly, you've made up your mind." Is kind of
Yeah.
the way that she ended it. So I think she ended it, but she was kind of the one who said that.
Yeah.
But I do think that that was kind of implied. Like I get how she came to that conclusion, but I just wonder if she hadn't said that. I do wonder what Carl would have then said to end it. Whether he would have said, kind of made let her make that decision, or whether he was I don't know. I would have been very interested for her not to have ended it there and see what happened, because I don't know. I think Carl was just waiting for her to say that. I think he wanted her to break up with him, basically. I think because he didn't want to look like the Sandoval, and that was very clear that he was very afraid of people thinking of him as the villain here. And so I think that his way of getting around that was to have her be the one to break it off.
Yeah. I can see that. But I don't know. It's like interesting that I feel like, especially with it was when they showed like the article clips and all that stuff. Like, I remember when that happened, that everyone was like, "Oh my god!" Like, Lindsay was so blindsided. I still don't know why she thinks she was so blindsided, because like it was clear that everything was going wrong in that relationship. That, like, I don't think it was such a blindside, that, or maybe she was just trying to see it more glass full. But so I think like she was just so set on like, oh, we're getting married, like we're engaged, like this is gonna happen, and really wanted to work through it. And Carl just wasn't gonna do that. And so when she was able to be like, well, you made your decision, then he's like, well, I guess so. Like, sure, like, yeah, we're not getting married now. He didn't want to do it all. Like, going into that conversation is what my opinion is.
Yeah, I think that where Lindsay is saying that she was blindsided is, I think, in large part due to the fact that Carl was not very direct with her for a large part of the season in terms of like the conversation he had with his parents. It took him a long time for him to say anything to her about that.
Yeah.
So I think that she did kind of have for a lot of the season not a full picture of all the conversations he was having with people about his relationship, but still they were arguing a lot. And I mean, they for them not to leave the last weekend together, clearly things were not good.
Yeah.
And so as she knew that, and I think that maybe she just is saying, I think she was going to try to work on it with him no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I think in a lot of ways that is very comparable to Ariana in the Tom situation, because she, it sounds like, was very willing to just kind of do whatever it took to make that relationship work, even though things maybe weren't great at the time of the affair. And I think similarly with Lindsay, she was just gonna make it work no matter what. I think in her mind, it was just like relationships are difficult. We're gonna get through this. Every couple before their wedding on Bravo has a bad season that where it's like, oh my god, are they gonna get married? Kyle and Amanda had the same thing. Their summer before their wedding was awful for them. And I think that to Lindsay's perspective, she was kind of like, yeah, I guess this is, planning a wedding is difficult. We're going to fight, but we're going to make it work and then have a happily ever after. And so I can see that perspective, that's kind of how she was thinking about it, probably. But she could not have been shocked that he was at least considering delaying it, or needing to have a very serious conversation and a lot of things to change before they got married.
Yeah. For sure.
Now, looking ahead to next season of Summer House, which will start filming in about a month, do we think that Lindsay and Carl will be able to film together, or will they have a similar situation to Tom and Ariana, where the whole season is about trying to get them to have a conversation that they're not going to have? So, how do we think this season will kind of play out in that regard?
Yeah, I feel like at least there's no cheating involved in this situation. That I think there's a little bit not like easier, but like in general, like can be forgivable a little bit better than if there was cheating. So I think that they could at least like really not have to talk to each other, but still be in the same room or just be in the same areas of things. Like I don't foresee it being such a big problem, like how it was with Ariana and Tom. So like I think we'll have to see what goes down like in the reunion and all that stuff too, because in the previews of that, like it doesn't look so good. But overall, like I think that they'll still be able to film together.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to be nearly as much of an issue as it was for Tom and Ariana, because I think a couple of factors. First of all, the timing of it. We're filming this season a year out, basically, from the breakup. And that's a huge difference from Scandal, where they started filming just a couple of months after that happened.
Mhm.
So I think a lot more time has passed, and both Lindsay and Carl have had a lot more time to process it and move forward. And I think that this reunion does not look to be nearly as toxic for them as the Vanderpump Rules season 10 reunion was for Tom and Ariana. So I think, and like you said, the situations are so different. I think this was a really, sad breakup, obviously, a hard breakup for both of them. But there's not that same cheating with a best friend situation, months long affair. So I think that they can get over that. Well, not get over it, but I think that they can at least tolerate each other a lot more easily, probably, than Tom and Ariana could. But also, I think the concept of Summer House makes this a lot easier, because if they need to, they can just kind of rotate weekends. Like Carl can come one weekend, then Lindsay can come the next weekend. Like I think that they could avoid each other quite a bit without it affecting the show too much, as long as there's enough other stuff happening besides the drama between the two of them. So I think that they can get around it that way if need be.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's move on now to the competition chat. So Molly, take it away.
Yes. Well, first off, we got some partial cast announced for season 3 of the Traitors spoiled. Well, it wasn't announced, it was spoiled of some of the people who are filming for season 3. So, Michael, who are those people that are spoiled?
Yes. Now, I want to be very clear here. This is not official. This is a reliable account that has spoiled casts in the past and has been very accurate. But there certainly could be names that get dropped off here. By the time you were listening to this, there could be more names announced, or, a couple people from this list could have been announced as not being on. So I want to make that clear that this is as of the night of Sunday, June 2nd. This is what has been announced. So we have Brittany Haynes from Big Brother. We have Caroline Weiger from Survivor 44. We have Tony Vlachos from Survivor Cagayan and Winners of War, winner of both seasons. We have Tom Sandoval. Enough said. We have Bob Harper, former trainer on The Biggest Loser. Robin Dixon from Real Housewives of Potomac, Dorinda Medley from Real Housewives of New York, Dolores Catania from Real Housewives of New Jersey, Mary Cosby from Salt Lake City. There's a little note on this one that says he's the least confident in her of all the housewives, but that there are signs pointing to yes. Then we have Chriselle Staus from Selling Sunset, Sean Lowe from The Bachelor, Wells Adams, also from The Bachelor, Sierra Miller from Summer House, and Davey Rickenbacker from Survivor 36. So, of those names, Molly, who are you most excited for?
Wow, those are really. I feel like I like a lot of those people that are coming or supposedly going to be on this season. But standouts for sure would be Sean and Wells. I feel like I haven't like I love seeing Sean. I still follow him on Instagram. That like I love following him and Catherine and their kids. Like I just love Sean. So I feel like he would be such a good member on the Traders. And also Wells is just so funny. So I would be really excited to see them together. Maybe they would work together, I feel like. So that would be fun.
I worry about Sean because I just think people on the Traders have tended to kind of be a very sanctimonious and very like with Ari and Peter, they were such like the faithful of the most faithful of the faithfuls and would get so upset at anyone who did anything traitorous. And I feel like I hope that Sean is not that way. I could see him being that way though a little bit. Maybe not so much as Ari or Peter, and Peter did play the game quite a bit, but I could see him being maybe hopefully a little bit more like that than Ari, who is really just like still so bitter at Suri years later.
Yeah.
But I am so excited. I cannot even in my mind fathom Carolyn and Mary Cosby on the same living in the same house together. They will either hate each other or be two peas in a pod. And I don't know which way it'll go, but I cannot wait. I so hope that they're both on there.
Okay. I
Um,
can't wait to see Carolyn again.
yeah, no, me too. I'm so excited for that. I love Brittany Haynes. She's going to be incredible. She's been a name since the first season who I was like, gotta get Brittany Haynes on the Traders. She is going to be so good. I the only thing that I feel like this cast is lacking a little bit that season two had with these people with past histories with each other, because nobody on this cast has filmed a show together at all, to the best of my knowledge. Except I get well, no, because Sean was never on Paradise, so Sean and Wells never interacted on Bachelor. I'm sure they know each other, but like we had Parvati and Sandra. We had who else did we have that had a history? Phaedra and Sheree. We had Dan and Janelle last season. There were all these people who had a lot of history and had known each other for so long that I think that's I hope with the rest of the names, because we still probably have at least 6 names, maybe 7 to come. I hope some of those are people who have past history with some of the people that have already been announced, because I think that adds so much to it in terms of the excitement preseason. Like people could not wait to see Parvati and Sandra together because they had so much beef from the past. So I hope that that is the case, and I think that that will even increase my excitement that I'm already very excited for this cast. I think it looks really good.
Yeah, for sure.
So should we move on to the goat?
Yes. So the GOAT episode 6 just released this past week, and we saw that Jill had won the GOAT this week and chose teams that were a bit controversial and that were not comparable compared to what Reza believed that Jill's team was much stronger than Team Reza. So, what are your thoughts on those teams, Michael?
I thought they were pretty fair overall. I don't necessarily agree with Reza there. I think it's easy for him to say that in knowing that he felt like he was on the team that that lost, obviously. So I didn't have an issue with it. I think where Reza kind of went wrong was that he assumed that he and Jill still had this Bravo connection from the beginning of the game that he had kind of abandoned when he didn't need Jill anymore. When the guys had so many numbers, he just kind of tossed Jill to the side. And then as soon as he needs her again, the guys don't have the numbers anymore as much, and he's on the losing team and up for elimination, then all of a sudden he's like, Jill, remember when we had that Bravo thing? We're still good, right? And Jill's kind of like, no, I moved on. You didn't need me anymore, so now I formed other connections with Davon and whoever else. And so I think that Reza underestimated Jill's ability to kind of play the game in that way and not just rely on her alliance that she had on day one that kind of fell apart.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that Jill was actually playing the game. Like I feel like she is a actually like really entertaining and I feel like good strategies and stuff like that's going on that I might not have expected going into it that like she would be playing it like this. So I'm excited. Like I really like her as a player, so I'm glad that overall like it seems like she's just not like just going with whatever like she started with. Like she is switching things up and it's working out for her. So obviously we then saw that Reza did go home. So were you surprised by that in the end?
No, I was not. I expected it by the end. I think that the episode was really leading up for, I felt like, for Reza to leave. And I think that it was the right time for him to go. I think, look, he's very entertaining in the sense that he's very emotional. He wears his heart on his sleeve. But I think that it was definitely his time to go. So I was not surprised by that. But I was a little surprised that he was really went hard at Jill when he left. That was a little surprising, especially after he had kind of gotten on Kristen for doing the same thing when she left. That it felt, and they pointed that out that it was a little hypocritical of him to leave basically the same way Kristen did.
Yeah, Reza just wanted to be dramatic again. Moving on to our rest of reality is that we have a list out on Netflix of their new and returning shows that are just coming up in this next year or two. So, Michael, want to go through that list?
Yeah, so Netflix announced a ton of upcoming shows, some brand new shows and some returning shows. We're going to go through very quickly all of them. So we have first here, Owning Manhattan is starting June 28th, and this is a look at the Ryan Serhant, who was formerly of Million Dollar Listing New York. He started his own brokerage after leaving that show, and it is going to follow that brokerage in a very similar way to Selling Sunset, Selling OC, Buying Beverly Hills, all of those shows. But it is a look at his new brokerage, and the trailer came out for that this past week, and I think it looks really good. So I'm excited to watch that starting June 28th. Then we have Love is Blind UK starting in August. So that is exciting. A UK version of Love is Blind, which will tide us over until the US comes out with season 7. Then we have Selling the City, which is a official spinoff of Selling Sunset and Selling OC. It is going to follow the Douglas Elliman brokerage in New York City, which, you know, is a very successful brokerage. That is a big name. So I think that'll be really interesting because it'll be the first. Oh, no. Well, Selling Tampa also did not follow the Oppenheim group there. So it won't be the first, but it will be the first current one since that was canceled version of Selling that won't follow the Oppenheim group. So hopefully that'll have a little bit of a different vibe to it. Then we have a brand new show, Building the Band. So it brings together 50 of the most talented singers for a truly unique competition show where building the perfect band is all about chemistry. So it says that the singers are in complete control as they seek to form their own bands without ever seeing each other. So all they have to go on is musical compatibility, connection, chemistry, and merit. And then eventually they'll meet and have to perform all together. Then we have Battle Camp. So this is kind of seems like a challenge-esque show where it brings together all the stars from across Netflix's shows, and they will be competing in a physical and mental competition where a giant spinning wheel randomly decides who stays and who goes. So they have to compete in order to keep their name off of that wheel. And then the winner in the end will take home $250,000. Then we have Million Dollar Secret. It is a $1 million prize is won by one of 12 players right at the start of their first episode. Then the others will hunt them down and try to eliminate the millionaire in an effort to have the money move to somebody new. So then at the end, someone will win the $1 million. Don't have a ton of details about exactly how that works yet. But that does not also have a premiere date yet. So probably sometime in 2025, I would think. Then some new seasons of returning shows. Perfect Match, we already knew, is coming up June 7th. The Mole is coming up June 28th. And then we got an announcement for Too Hot to Handle season 6 that starts in July. Apparently, there's some changes this season. They're going to be, apparently, they, for the first time, I believe, signed up knowing it was going to be Too Hot to Handle. And then there is maybe some old familiar faces stopping by, it sounds like. And then there was also, and this is my favorite, new sidekick for Lana called Bad Lana. So we'll see what that means. And then announcements for the season 3 of The Ultimatum coming up in December, and The Ultimatum Queer Love coming in 2025. And then some new video games based on all these shows. So that's all the news. We have a lot of news there. What are you excited for?
Yeah, no, all of those sound really good. I feel like I'm gonna be really excited to watch Selling in the City. So we were talking about this kind of recently that like New York City shows seem to be really good for reality TV because we see in Summer House like they're not afraid to share their opinions, like share certain things that are on their minds versus like sometimes in LA like they're trying to give this facade of like who they are and like it's not always accurate or it's not the most true versions of themselves. So with the city and New York City, like I think that's gonna be a really good show.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love New York based shows overall, I think. And yeah, I'm really excited for Battle Camp. I think. I hope the spinning wheel thing sounds a little corny, and I hope that doesn't ruin it too much. Like, I hope it's still very. I hope there's a lot of strategic and, well, I don't even care about physical, but I hope there's a lot of strategic components to it that can keep them from being on that wheel because I think that'll keep things a lot more interesting. But I love, and each time it's, you know, people from different shows coming together. I always love that. I think that that's always so interesting to see two people from two, like, you think of them in two very different universes, and that's why I love like the Traitors and, you know, all those different shows. So I am excited for that, and I'm excited for the Ultimatum new season. I feel like it's been so long since we've had that. So I mean, December is a long time away too. So I feel like by the time we get to that, I'm going to be very excited for it. And yeah, I think those are probably the ones that really come to mind.
Yeah. All of the shows are exciting though. I love all Netflix shows, or especially the reality shows. But what are you looking forward to for this week, Michael?
I am excited for the Valley. So we skipped the Valley this week, but we will come back to it next week for the finale, so, which I think is going to be very good because we're going to get, they picked the cameras back up for Jax and Brittany and probably for Michelle and Jesse too, I would think. We didn't know it at the time, but I would think that they probably filmed an update on them too since they split. So that'll be very intense, I'm sure. And yeah, I mean, Summer House Reunion is exciting. And then we have also Perfect Match new season coming up this week. We'll probably wait for 2 weeks to give an update on that, I would think, because it will have just come out when we record next week. But yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Also, Love Island is starting this week. So
Oh, wait, is it?
I think it's like June 7th this week, I think.
Oh, wow. Oh my God,
Which
I didn't
we're
realize
already
it
on
was
June
coming out so
2nd.
soon. I thought that was end of June for some reason.
I'm
Geez, they
pretty
haven't
sure.
even come out with the cast yet. Is that
Oh,
right? Love Island?
okay. I
Oh,
definitely.
maybe Love Island UK.
Uh,
No, Love Island US, I think, starts at the end of June, if I'm not
okay,
mistaken.
well, so Love Island UK.
June 11th. Oh, that's actually really soon.
Oh, then it is
Wow.
soon.
Okay, you
Okay,
were right.
I
Yeah.
wasn't so off.
No, you were not making that up. Jeez, that's starting much because usually Love Island doesn't start till July. Yeah, it's starting.
Okay, so
I
that's
forgot.
definitely next week.
Yeah, support Ariana, everyone.
Yes. But yeah, I really want to see the Summer House reunion this week, which is gonna be some juicy conversations, I'm sure. And also with the Valley, that's obviously gonna be a lot to break down. But we will chat with y'all next week when we go into more of that, and hope you all have a great week.
Bye, everyone.